Hello, everyone, and welcome to In Time. My name is Nicholas Lamar Soutter, and as always, here is Ansgar Odinson.
Hey, everybody.
Thank you for joining us once again on In Time. We are very delighted to have you. We have a couple things we wanted to cover before we get started. If you want to join the after party, we are going to have an after show, and we'd love to have you guys there. We're going to have Fred in the after show, and he's going to be taking questions. You'll get a chance to chat with him, and maybe chat with Ansgar and I if you're so inclined. I have a feeling we're going to be sort of the duds. Everyone wants to talk with Fred. But we will. That's going to be only on our channel. So right now we are casting both to the GDC. We sincerely appreciate the GDC hosting us, and to our channel, which is In Time Show on YouTube. So if you want to attend the after party, that will be on the In Time Show channel.
After show,
and
not the after party.
Or the after show. Yes, thank you. The after show, that is on the In Time Show channel. There's a link to that on the GDC. So if you're on the GDC, you'll be able to find a link there. You'll also see a link for the super chats if you have, if you want to drop a super chat and let us know something. If you have a question for Fred, let us know. We're also trying to monitor the live chat, but there does seem to be a connection issue with the live chat, so we're having some difficulty seeing it. We've got Dave McGinnis in the live chat on the In Time side, and he will also be kicking up questions. So hopefully things will be smooth from here on out. So
don't count on
it's
it.
unlikely. It's unlikely. No, yeah. We do have our first Patreon hangout coming up on Wednesday. So to all our patrons, if you should already have notice in the on the Patreon page, but if anyone also wants to become a patron, you get access to that right away, and we hope you will consider it. If you like the show, you'll consider supporting us. And I don't know. I think that just about covers those things. Ansgar, did you have anything else that you want to add on that front?
So I do think that it's worth noting we're still going to be having after parties at on certain shows. Those are still going to be on my channel, but because those are a little less moderated and they can go a little more off the rails, we are going to be keeping those on.
Yeah, just a little bit. If you want Welcome to the Jungle, that's gonna be Ansgar's channel after the show. He's gonna be there with a name dragon. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you want to ask a question, I would suggest using the links in the description to go to our Discord. There will be a waiting room there where Dave McGinnis will figure out what questions you have for Fred, and in a orderly fashion, we'll let you guys into the room to ask your questions during the after show. So make sure that you head over to the Discord and get yourself set up there.
I'm a little surprised you said that, actually. I've never heard the word Dave McGinnis and orderly in the same sentence, but okay.
I like that you say that when he can't defend himself.
I'm going to get all my digs in while I can. He's just going to keep a list of all the things he's going to, considering the number of screw-ups I've done today. I got to be a little careful because he knows where all the skeletons are buried. So before we begin, I do want to say one thing, and this is some of you, well, probably by now most of you know, Strike, who was a YouTuber and a scientist and did a number of debunking videos and really beloved by the community, was killed this morning in a car crash. And our hearts go out to his family and to all his supporters. I think I did not know him particularly well, but most of the people I spent time with knew him really rather well. And so some of them I've been talking to, and some have unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, some have gone silent, and I think that's because that's what they need. But our hearts go out to them, and I think we're gonna have a good show, and I'm very pleased for the show, but we did want to say that we are very sorry for everyone who's going through that. So having said that, let's do our best to go forward here, and I would like to introduce Fred the Felon. Fred, how are you?
I'm good.
Now Fred is, in case you haven't figured it out yet, Fred is a trucker, and he's actually on the road now because, as I understand it, he's got a bit of a tight schedule. So we do appreciate you fitting us in, especially since we changed the time on you too.
Not a problem.
So now, Fred, and I don't want to mischaracterize anything, but Fred is actually, if you were to go into YouTube now and look up, I think staunch conservative, you're like the first link. Staunch Republican. All right, you're the first link that comes up. Is that right? Oh,
yeah.
All right.
For example, if you go to YouTube and you punch in staunch Republican,
yeah,
that'll be the first thing. Obviously, it's not me. It's a campaign video. But yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, yes, okay. So there's the video. So, and I do want to get onto that. But you are a Republican.
Well, you could play it. You could play it as Mike for the audience. It's only a minute and a half.
We
might answer.
I will talk to Ansgar about getting that video, and we'll see if we can add that towards the end of the show. But you are a Republican, but as I understand it, you will not be voting Republican this season.
I would not. No, and
Oh.
I would characterize myself. I took a test that said that I was a libertarian centrist, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I've always seen myself not necessarily as a Republican, but conservative, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have my reasons for seeing that, and basically, it was by default because there was no other place to go.
So do you see yourself kind of aligned with like maybe Penn Jillette kind of in politics?
Well, I can tell you this. I'm always about what's best and what's like where's the solution? Where's my solution lie, right?
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, I just couldn't find that in the Democrat Party as of late, as the last 30 years, right? So and then even though my background is I come from a religious home. My folks are very religious, but they gave me up to the state in my younger teens, and I went from kind of a rural area of Missouri, in the suburbs, one of the last little suburbs in Independence, Missouri, before you get to a little town called Buckner, to like in the middle of downtown, like St. Louis. As a kid, basically of one of three white kids in an all black neighborhood. So I had a lot of cultural shock,
I can kind of empathize with that a little bit.
Yeah,
I grew up in a very predominantly black neighborhood, and it was kind of interesting because a lot of what some of my black friends tell me has been their experiences growing up in America. I almost mirror, at least once a week I got my ass kicked just for being white, so I can kind of empathize with that.
Yeah, so basically as a younger male, I got into trouble, and I went right from being in a children's home and graduated from that to being going into the system and going pretty much straight to prison within about 6 months of leaving the children's home. I was getting impressions with the law, and then I just kind of went on a little crime spree in my younger teens and 20s.
It's got to be hard to be dealing with some of that and not have direct parents in your life to kind of guide.
Well, yeah, like I have. So basically, if I could tell the story correctly, my grandma and grandfather had two daughters, and they were polar opposites. My mother was a schizophrenic who she actually died in the same city I live in now. 6 months 6 months after I got there, and I never knew, right? And I live outside of Phoenix in a small town called Maricopa. But and then so that's my birth mother. And then my adopted mother was my aunt, my sister. My grandfather had two daughters. My aunt adopted me, but by the time I hit my teens, she shipped me to St. Louis from Kansas City, in the rural part of Kansas City, Independence, Missouri. So, and I was very sheltered. I was very sheltered as a kid in that little area, and then I went from an area from there to a children's home where literally the people that worked at the children's home would throw throw like 3 bags of cereal or 2 bags of cereal on a table, and like kids would be ripping the bags open, and if you weren't one of the biggest, loudest, most aggressive kids, they would actually be picking up the cereal off the ground and putting it in their bowl.
Wow,
Right?
that's got to almost train you to be a might makes right kind of bully. You know what I mean?
Well, it it basically, I learned very quickly that if you don't ask for what you need, right,
Mhm.
or if you don't take it, if
Yeah.
there's, if there is an opportunity, you've gotta seize it like that. I
That
learned
that
very
that is
quickly.
metaphorically absolutely being exactly thrown to the wolves. You know what I mean?
Literally. So I went from using my logical, what I call my logical mind, to more of an instinctual
Mhm.
situation, and we'll talk more about the attitude or the attitude of scarcity and the mindset of scarcity here. As the shows goes on, but a mindset of scarcity will dumb you down, literally, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
And so, I didn't really know how to cope. And I go by Fred the Felon. I haven't had a felon. I have 13 years clean, not a drink, not a drop, since 4/14 of '06. Nothing. I mean, I don't even drink coffee. Like I'm drug free, and that's just the way I am. And it doesn't bother me. I can hang out with people that do whatever. Obviously, I don't hang out in, shooting galleries or crack houses, but I can go to bars and hang out with people and do stuff like that. Um, but I didn't realize that I had a problem coping, and I had poor problem solving techniques and poor coping mechanisms until I got really into recovery. And one of the things that I do with other addicts, and I go by Fred the Felon because I help felons and addicts and people from downtrodden situations, and I do it with, I coach these people, and I honestly, I'm very hard on uh, the people that I coach. I expect them to do what they say they're going to do when they say they're going to do it. That's kind of one of the problems that a lot of times people, that have been in the brushes with the law, they're not dependable. They have poor problem solving techniques. Uh, their coping mechanisms are not very good, and so I always try to get people, like, what's your desired result? Just kind of almost like a flow chart in your head, right? And let's sort through what's your desired result, either in life or in a situation you would call me about. And then, okay, what are the steps it takes to get there? And then what steps are first, what steps are last? And then from there, is there anybody that we need to kind of bring alongside you other than myself to kind of help you along to get there? And then let's start, because my people that call me and want to be mentored, uh, if they call me with a problem and we work through solutions and we give them, okay, this is the step one, and then they call me and I call it puking on me, right? Like, everybody has problems in their life, right?
Mhm.
And everybody loves to have somebody in their life that they can complain to. right? And if the person continues to puke on me and hasn't really done any of the footwork, I'll just go like, so if we started on step one, right? If we started like getting the ball rolling on you getting where you want to be, okay, then I don't know why why are you calling me? Like I'm the guy who helps you, not that, like, if you want to talk football, we can talk football, right? But don't tell me about your problems and not do something about them. So I'm kind of a male who wants other males to teach a mindset of abundance and thinking about what you want and never having a doubt in your mind that it's going to happen, because you've got a plan and you're going to stick to your plan and you're going to do the work to get there. So go ahead, guys.
All right. Well, okay. We were talking about. No, I'm sorry. I lost my train of thought and where we were. So you were a very strong conservative, and you have decided that you don't see what you're looking for. You haven't seen anything in the Democratic Party for 30 years, but so you've been in sort of the conservative camp, and now there is somebody in the Democratic Party that you like, and who is that?
So his name is Andrew Yang.
And what about
and his supporters?
Yang?
They go by the Yang Gang.
Yep.
What I like about him, to be quite honest with you, I was kind of listening, actually, to, there's a friend of mine, his name is Red Viking Trucker. He's a great guy, right? He has a trucking blog, or vlog rather, right? And he had Andrew Yang on the channel. And so there were a bunch of people were flipping out, actually, because most truckers are Trump supporters. Obviously, if you see that says "Make America Think Harder," guys, right? So Andrew Yang is the guy he's the Asian man, the Asian guy who likes math. They say the opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian man who likes math, right? And math stands for "Make America Think Harder." So he was on Red Viking Trucker's channel, and I was kind of listening, kind of not. I was doing other things, but then there's always a point in interviews sometimes where the interviewer tries to push the person interviewed kind of into a corner and put them into a box about whatever issue. And he was just like, well, that's the thing, is it's not about left or right, it's forward, right? So, and I think it was really in response to like people freaking out, right? Because Red Vikings supporters freaking out. And so whatever I was kind of tuning him out with and just not really listening with the full fervor that I should have been, like immediately, like a veil lifted, like the clouds parted, and like, I was just like, what? Not left but right, but forward. Like, are you saying like you want to like just fix shit with nothing, no ideologies other than like what's the problem and what's the solution, right? Instead of like what would the Republicans do, or what would be the Democrat, how would this make Democrats happy or vote for me in next election, right? So I was like, what the fuck? Am I allowed to curse?
Yes.
Yeah, please. Fuck yeah.
Okay. I have a question.
So
what?
Basically,
Oh, go ahead.
Basically, I was like, what the fuck, right? And so I was like able to hear him, right? But I wasn't sold. I was like, this guy's a socialist. He's got this idea, give everybody $1,000 a month. That's a gimmick, right? He's a socialist. He doesn't know squat. Who is this guy, right? So I was listening to him. He sounded okay, seems like a nice guy. Dresses pretty decent looking guy. Looks like he's had some success. A business. I've only been a trucker for a year and a half. I was a business person. I ran a mortgage agency, and I was just a lifelong salesperson, right? So I was like, what? But I was just like, at the end of the day, I was like, yeah, he's a Democrat. Okay? So I put him in the blue box immediately and just kind of thought nothing more of it. And then about a week went by, and I was, my buddy was like, hey, they're looking for people. They want to connect with somebody. And I was like, well, I don't know if I want to connect with this guy because they'll probably paint things in such a light that it's not going to be beneficial for me. Like, everybody on earth is primarily looking to do things for their own incentives, me included, right? And Andrew Yang talks about that. So I was like, I don't know if I want to be subjected to talking to somebody who I don't align myself with idea-wise, right? So I was like, you know what? Just book it. So go ahead and just book a meeting with me and Andrew. So his team reached out to me, and and they said, "Hey, tell me a little bit more about your story." I'm like, "Hey, my name's Fred the Felon. I help addicts and felons and poor people, and that's what I do. And I'm an addict. I'm in recovery." So we kind of went through kind of a playbook of what the conversation would be like. And I hadn't slept the night before, so I was like all over the place, literally just talking like as much as I could and just being kind of loud and obnoxious because I was like on an adrenaline high. Uh, but but back to when I took the meeting. When I took the meeting with the idea in mind that I'm gonna foil this guy's plans. Like, this guy is he doesn't know squat. He's a socialist. He's a communist. He's a Marxist. He's all these things that I had in my head, right?
So you were actually out to almost like sabotage him, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, I was gonna punk him.
Okay, so the reason you agreed to do, let me just get this straight. The reason you agreed to do this was because you were going to punk him. That was it. You wanted to hang out with him so you could make him look bad.
Well, the thing is like when I was telling you guys, and I was going back to being in the children's home and then being in prison, right? And then I was the guy in prison.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wasn't in the white power group, right? Like, I don't have, if you look, right, I have a couple tattoos. One is my clean date, right? And then another one on here. And then, I have one right here, but it was just my birth name. I was adopted. I was named Don Carlos Boyd III at birth, and then adopted by my aunt. And my grandfather's name was Fred. They called me Fred, right? So I got that. So, but I got all those tattoos on the streets when I got out on the streets. So I was kind of an anomaly in because I did security, because like within my first 3 weeks I apologize. In my first 3 days I got into a physical altercation, right?
Mm-hmm.
A physical argument, if you will, with somebody, and then that put my level straight up to max, right? And I wasn't in I wasn't in prison for anything serious. I was involved in a minor stolen car ring, and I got busted, right? I mean, it wasn't anything huge. It was, it's not like I killed anybody or anything. I wasn't a nine in prison because I had already known how to deal with people of all races and all backgrounds because I had this this time in the children's home, right?
Right.
So like in the children's home, we would literally stand in a circle. We called it joning on each other, right? We would stand in a circle and we would crack at each other. And to bear in mind, like I was a white kid back in the Brian Bosworth days where I had my hair cut like Brian Bosworth, right? And like I I lived in an all black neighborhood, but my identity, like I wasn't like, what up, homie, right? My identity was like Guns N' Roses t-shirts and AC/DC and like chain wallets and cowboy boots and shit like that, right? So I stuck out like a sore thumb, but the people that I did have friends with were like they were tight with me, but they were few and far between. So I had the skill set when I went into prison that I could I made a lot of money in prison, right? And I took a lot of flack too because I would do business. I would do business with the Mexicans, right? Or I would do business with the Sureños, and the Sureños would get pissed off at me because I was doing business with the Mexicans, right? The Sureños is a group, right?
Yep.
And so I would do business with Bloods and Crips and Vices. I would do business with people, and then right, and they would say, "Hey, you can't." And I'm like, first of all, you don't run me, right? Like I'm here doing my time, you're doing your time. I do what I want while I'm here, and if that's that's the issue, then that's on you, right? So I got out of prison, and by the way, when I was in prison, I was just freaking huge because all I did was lift weights, right? I was an athlete in high school anyway, right? So I just was that was my thing, just working out and trying to be an asshole as much as I could and trying to intimidate other people, but I was a loner, just like not good in prison. So I get out and I try to like live life the way in the construct that is given to you when you get out of prison, and I wasn't very successful at it, right? Like I could find girls liked me. I've always been able to talk to women, but I couldn't find like a solid mate. I could find a chick to hang out with me for a few weeks, but I just couldn't find like a girl that I was interested in, right? I couldn't find a job that I was passionate about. I could find a job that would I could just scrape by, right? And then I got into sales, and then when I got into sales, that's really when things moved and progressed.
I have a quick question for you before we get
No, go ahead.
into how you got convinced by Yang. What convinced you? What was it about? I understand you're a former Trump supporter. What was it about Trump that had you convinced? I'm just curious, like what it was about him that was compelling to you before we get into what was compelling about Yang.
Okay, so I always get mischaracterized as a Trump supporter. I actually supported Trump more after he got elected right?
Mm-hmm.
Just out of let's give this guy a chance, right?
Fair enough. Okay.
Then I didn't vote for Trump, nor did I vote for Hillary, right?
Gotcha. All right.
Because like I kind of thought like my choice, like I didn't feel like anybody was voting for something. I felt like everybody was voting against someone else.
I mirror that sentiment.
Mm.
Very,
Right?
very
So
much.
I like ranked choice voting, but in the general, I actually have a idea that I like called uh, called the negative vote or the minus vote, right? So instead of voting for someone, you can vote against someone by just doing a -1, right? Like, let me take this vote away. Let me take a vote away from Hillary,
I
right? Like,
actually,
if I could have done that, I probably would have just taken a vote away from Hillary. But under this scenario and under this rule of law that I have in mind that I think is a good idea, I think it would have been minus 141 million to like minus 140 million.
it's
Because
interesting in New Zealand, I believe it is. They have an interesting voting system where you pick, I believe it's like your top 5 candidates. Like here's your first choice, here's your second choice, third, fourth, and fifth. And so what happens is it's like if your first choice isn't in the running anymore, kind of a deal. Like they're nowhere near being elected, then your vote goes to your second choice and on down. So you're not just
yeah,
casting a vote for one candidate. I think that's kind of interesting.
yeah, well, I think that ranked choice voting is great in in an election where we have 10 candidates available, but
Mm-hmm.
in a general where there's only 2 people,
Yeah.
right? I don't really think ranked choice, and so I like that negative vote that I think is a good idea.
Yeah.
But obviously I don't think that will ever pass, right? So
So once you
back to the
became,
gang, back
well, I was gonna say, once you became kind of sort of once you started giving Trump some support after he was elected, what was it that
yeah,
turned you
yeah.
off of him?
So I was really I thought Trump. Uh, First of all, I was impressed with the way he came out with his speech. Right,
Mm-hmm.
like I was like what I was expecting. Right, is a a a smack talking session that is like that was almost as bad as grabbing pussy and making America great again. Right,
Right.
like that. I was expecting him to come out and say, I told you so. Uh, did you guys were you know? I was expecting him to like just completely bash Hillary, right? And he came out with a pretty good speech, and I was like, huh, maybe this guy is trying to turn over a new leaf. And then
I can see where that would
the
be
economy.
appealing, especially to you. You know.
Yeah, well, the thing with me is, uh, one of the things I like about Andrew when he went on the Bill Maher show, they asked him about identity politics, and he said he's like, look, I'm the son of immigrants, so I understand the sentiment, right? Myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but Democrats have to know that identity politics is a very poor way to earn and garner a vote. When 30, 40 years ago, when I was a kid, uh, the Democrat Party was about the little guy or gal, and we need to get back to that,
Right.
right? And that really is how the Democrats kind of. That's how I got so conservative, right? Is because there's this toxic left, right? And and I'm an alpha male, right? So I'm an alpha male who's white, who's like over 40. So like I am I am pretty much if you're a toxic leftist, you might tell me that I'm the source of all the pain and suffering that's going on in the country. I actually had this. I was at the debate in Detroit a month and a half ago, and this woman told me that like she accused me of all this stuff, right? And so that 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 kind of spirit that is coming from the toxic, the what I call the regressive left, right?
Yeah.
Is really what drove me from and libertarian all the way to being conservative, right? And then in this last 6 months, like Trump has just like completely, like this last 6 months to a year, he has just completely.
I've actually seen exactly the phenomenon you're talking about with a lot of people, where the rise of widespread identity politics, the evergreen college situation, and things like that, drove a lot of people who were even libertarian left, quite a bit to the right into either centrism or all the way to the right. And then the rise of Trump drove many of them right back over to the left. So
Well, I think
it's been kind of
particularly in the
interesting.
last year, you're
Hmm.
right, because like when he came out with like just some of the things that he, like for example, like a year ago, he said something like, "Well, I'd listen to anybody if anybody."
Oh, we have
We have,
lost.
yeah.
Interesting.
All right. Well, we were having some issues, so he is on the road right now, and if he goes through a dead zone, and I know he had been saying that maybe if he had a chance he'd pull over, but he also uh, has a schedule to maintain. So, Ansgar, what are your thoughts so far?
Well, first of all, rather interesting guest. This is the first time I know you got to talk to him a little bit. I know Dave got to talk to him quite a bit. This is my first time talking to him, and it's quite interesting how the so far in his timeline kind of thing. The only real difference between kind of the way I grew up and kind of the way he grew up is I had a stable home. You know what I mean?
Mm,
And
mm,
had I gone into a group home, I could have ended up exactly the same way. Seriously,
yeah, no,
exactly the same way. Um, and so I find that I find that rather fascinating. How we were talking the other day in one of our other shows, I think on gun control, how one little thing, you know what I mean, can completely change the course of events, including a single human life.
oh, absolutely. Um, yeah, we had it was oh shoot, now of course once again I've forgotten Giuseppe's, and oh no, I've forgotten his name, but yeah, that's and I find that sort of sort of a combination of determinism and chaos, and a very tiny, the butterfly flapping its wings in Japan, and all of a sudden you've got a
Yeah.
hurricane in Texas. um, I think it's interesting. I'm curious for when he gets back, and it looks like we may
Oh,
have him back
we
here.
have him back. Let me put him up on screen here. So,
Where did I lose you guys?
I'm not I believe, oh, you were talking about within the last year what Trump has done to move people back to the left.
Well, yeah, like Trump is just like he's said and done things that are just so incredibly egregious
Mhm.
that uh like let me give you an example. First of all, Donald Trump, and this is the main reason I didn't vote for him, right?
Mhm.
Donald Trump is not a president. He is a folk hero.
Right.
right? And he's a folk hero, quite honestly, for like there's just like uh he, let me give you an example. Nobody that you know can say that they're grabbing pussy and making America great again, right? 11 days
Right.
from the general or whatever it is, right? And then
Yeah.
Yeah.
nobody right now, I guarantee you, if Biden talked smack about John McCain,
Hmm.
right? Like,
Oh yeah.
I don't care who you are, left, right, center, nobody ever talked. And John McCain took the Republicans and the Democrats on many issues. He wouldn't kowtow to the Republicans on certain issues. If he disagreed with you, he would be like, okay, I'm
Hmm.
going with the Democrats on this issue, and I'm dying on this hill,
I had
right?
I'm not conservative at all, but I had a great deal of respect, still do, for John McCain. I think that he was a one of those conservatives that well, I'm sorry to see gone. You know, he was a to me, he was the model of what rational conservatism should be. You know.
Yeah, yeah. So what really kind of brings me out of the left is is first of all demasculation, right? Like for example, a lot of the guys that I mentor, they they grow up in homes with a single mother, right? And a lot of times the single mother will say, "I don't need a man. We don't need a man." And so what he gets out of it is, why would I want to be a man, right?
Mm.
If I'm not needed, why would I want to be something that is not or ever needed by the only person that is assigned to take care of me, right?
Hmm.
And then since women, not all, right?
Hmm.
Not all women, but women are the caretakers sometimes and can be a little bit more emotional than men. Men are very data driven and very, we're all about the win and the take.
On average, yes.
Yeah,
There are on average behavioral differences between males and females, but then again, and I just want to remind people that just because we're talking about something that is on average doesn't mean that that speaks for any one individual. You can come up with a million anecdotes of people who aren't. No one
correct,
is a complete stereotype of their sex. You know what I mean?
correct, correct. And I will concede that.
Hmm.
But one of the things that I won't concede is that men somehow need to take joy in being demasculated, right? And uh, hand their leadership qualities and capabilities over to women in their home, just just for the pure sake of making everyone else around them and society make them feel guilty and make everybody else around them feel good, right? Like I tell my and it where this comes out a lot of times, if you look, 30% of the men that are sexually active are having sex with 80% of the women that are sexually active. There's a whole 70% of males that would love to be sexually active, but the women won't have them, even though they're uh, they're everything the left says they should be, right? There's kind of jokes saying that your mom, the mom's the liberal and the dad is the conservative, right?
Hmm.
I've heard that before, right? So I'm not saying that this is a general thing, and it's kind of how I feel about everything all the time. But what drove me to the left, or from being more center and being center libertarian to being on the right, is this uh, this demasculation of men, and then also the left coming in, and they have this thing where they'll find a people group, whether it's women or whatever it is, a group of auto workers, just whatever, right? And they will sell them their own oppression, and then they will come back on the back end and say, I alone can save you. I'm your hero. I'm your savior. Vote for me, right? Whereas I'm one of those guys that's like, take control of your own situation, create your own situation, and the biggest gun wins, the law of the jungle, only the strong survive. So it was really difficult for me to get my mind around, wrap my mind around universal basic income, which is one of the biggest, it's the flagship policy proposal of Yang.
So I want to go back real quick to something we were talking about earlier, which is
2 weeks
I think
before, I'm like, I'm going to smash this dude. So I believe in know thy enemy, right? So I listened to his book, right? I listened to his book. And when I listened to his book, like, I got a great life. Like, I got a home, I got 2 newer cars, I got a 160-acre ranch, 3.5 hours from my home. I got all this great stuff. I got a woman that cares about me, right?
But before we go on, I do have some questions. I want to go back to we were obviously talking about masculine, gender roles within the home and things like that. And I think that if we don't address this, people are going to make some rather nasty assumptions in the way that you spoke. And I want to ask some questions. So, so you're saying that are you saying that you see value in the traditional male gender roles?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
For the men, I do, because the young men, without a man in the home,
Mm-hmm.
right? We just look at the numbers, right? But like, there is no hateful numbers, right? The numbers are what they are, right? The math is what it is. Like, you're 7 times more likely not to finish school. I think you're like 20 times more likely to go to jail without a man in the home, right?
Mm-hmm.
So male on male is it is more necessary. Like, for example, a mother can be a single parent easier to a girl, by and large. If you look at the numbers, the success of women raising women by themselves being better than males.
So the next, go ahead.
Okay, so I think we went off the rails in a couple of places. So, if I understand what you're saying correctly, and so I'd like to try to see if we can clarify on a couple of issues. If I understand correctly, at least one of the things that you're saying is, so when you were growing up as a young man, the message that you were getting, whether it was intentional or not, was that men are worthless. Is that essentially what you were saying?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. My adopted mother and father, right?
Yep.
My adopted mother and father is my aunt, and then the man she married. They've been together for 35 years, and they took care of me from like 5 to 13, right? It's more along the lines of what I got from the media, right, and what I got from what I call the regressive left, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say is when I mentor men, right? Like uh, for example, I have a lot of guys that they want to find a mate in life, and I'm like, well, if you want to find a mate in life, what you have to do is dump Twitter, not Twitter, but what's that thing? It's some kind of app, right? It's like the Bing
Um,
app.
You mean the dating app, the Tinder
Okay,
or
yeah.
something?
You gotta dump Tinder,
Yep.
right? Because that's just gonna keep you up all night, doing the swipe left, swipe right, right? And you
Yep.
have to go out to social events, and you have to look a woman in her eyes and tell her that that you like her style, and uh, that 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 you like her personally, and that both of you could like benefit from getting to know each other, and that you would like to get to know her and ask her out on a date. Like, don't look at your shoes and look her square in her eyes and say, hey, I want to get to know you, right? And
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason, it's very, very difficult for men to do now. It's never been difficult for me to do, right? Because like because of the way I was raised, I'm in touch. I'm in touch with the animal side of, like, we're human, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're human second. We're animal first, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And like one of the things I learned in my recovery is the disease of addiction. It said in the basic text, it says that addiction, that we're reduced to the animal level, right?
Oh,
Yep.
So animals are less fearless than humans.
so
Humans think a lot,
so I
Well,
want to ask a couple
right?
questions, if possible, because I still think that I still think that a lot of people are
I know
going to
I'm all
make.
over the board. Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
yeah.
I still think
Well,
some
no.
people are going to make some really negative assumptions about what you're saying, and I want to give you every chance to both clarify and make crystal clear your position. Um, uh,
Yeah, I'd kind of like to try to get back on track. Actually, I think
okay.
maybe because so what I remember we were talking about John McCain and how nobody could say anything negative about John McCain except Donald Trump. Donald Trump was a folk hero. Is that right? So I think
Yeah,
that's where we
he's a
sort of
folk hero. I call Donald Trump Black Socks.
Black Sox.
I say Donald Trump is Black Sox. He's Black Socks. And the reason I call him Black Socks is Black Socks can be dirty and you don't even know them. You don't even know that they're dirty. Like, you could throw as much dirt as you want on Donald Trump, right? And it doesn't even affect him, right?
Yep.
So,
Yep.
and the Democrats that we have now, other than Andrew Yang, they're going to try to out troll the troll. You're going to have 78-year-old Bernie trying to out troll Yang,
Yep.
right? You're going to have 76-year-old Biden trying to out troll Trump, and you're not going to out troll the troller in chief, right? You're going to have 70-year-old Warren trying to out troll Trump,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like a like if you get a Mike Tyson in there. I used to fight when I was a kid. They used
Yep.
to
Yep.
make, when I was in the children's home, they would make all the kids go. You either had to do karate, or you had to do band, or you had to do the Matthew Dickey's Boys Club, whatever, right?
Yep.
And like if you get a Mike Tyson guy in the ring, the last thing you want to do is go blow to blow with him. What you want to do is you want to pick that person apart and be tactical in your approach, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so with Yang is going to he is going to just talk issues. He's going to be like, yeah, whatever. Like, like Donald is going to talk mass amount of crap to Yang, which I did, right? Like I
Yep.
totally Okay, I was 90% sold on Yang from reading his book, watching the Joe Rogan podcast, and watching the Breakfast Club. So I'm 90% sold, right?
Yep.
The only reservation I have is that he's going to do what most of the left does and be super hypersensitive, and not be an alpha and respond to everything everybody does and says, right? So I was like, first of all, I was like, dude, like, do you know what you're getting into, right? Like, you are Asian, and the right is going to pick you apart on you being Asian, and they're gonna be like, they're gonna make all the Asian jokes, right? They're gonna come after your family, they're gonna come after your kids, your wife. They're gonna go through every blowjob you got underneath the bleachers, in high school, every skank you screwed in college, right? So I'm like putting the screws to them, right?
Yep.
I'm like, dude, you don't want to do this. Like, are you sure you want to do this? Right? He's like, oh yeah, I'm good. So like, I'm like trying to troll Andrew Yang for like the first 5 to 7 minutes. Right?
Yeah.
Just to see, because I want to find a crevice, a crack, a weakness, right? So I can say to myself, see, I told you, he's everything I thought a Democrat would be, right?
Yep.
I literally tried not to like Andrew Yang. I literally did. I tried.
Yeah.
Right? And I just couldn't, like, I listened to the book 7 hours straight. I listened to the podcast. I listened to the other podcast, the 2 podcasts, the Breakfast Club and the Joe Rogan podcast. And then I struggled. For like 3 days. I'm like, I'm going to have to support a Democrat, right? And this sucks. And like, I'm angry. I couldn't sleep. Well, I rarely sleep anyway, but I was angry. I was like frustrated, right? At myself. And then, because this is what I'm going to have to do. I'm going to have to be known as a Democrat, which to me, it means you're weak, right?
Yep.
And that's what I had in my head, right? And then this little light came on, and I had this moment of clarity. And this moment of clarity was it was like me talking to me. I was like, you always tell your sponsees because I don't like tribalism, right? Like, I don't like white versus black, red versus blue, like all that bullshit, right? A male versus female, right? Even though, right, I am an alpha male, and I don't want to be told that I have to be somebody else to make somebody else happy. I guess that's what I was trying to get to earlier, right?
So are you saying that you just sort of want to be your own person?
Yeah, I want to be my own person and not be told that I have to act a certain way in order to make 2% of the female population happy, right? That's going to hate me. That's going to hate me regardless of what I do.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So basically, I'm struggling.
Yeah.
I'm struggling with Andrew Yang for like 3 days. And then all of a sudden, what happens is I get this moment of clarity, and I'm like, in step work, you tell your sponsees or the people that you mentor to live your values or just get new ones, right?
Yep.
live your values, or get new ones. And it's okay. Like you get the choice to believe whatever you want to believe, right? And
Yeah.
if it works for you, then they're like, great. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So like, I'm like, why? I don't believe in tribalism. I don't believe in red versus blue, black versus white, rich versus poor, male versus female. Like I believe in cohesion, but also I believe in autonomy and you being who you want to be, the way you want to be it, right? Like, do
Yep.
you, boo? You know what I mean? Like they say.
Yep.
So I'm thinking to myself, you're like, if you don't, like, why are you struggling with Andrew Yang if you don't believe in tribalism? You have to live your values, or you just have to get new ones.
What did your Republican friends say when you said that you were going to start hanging out with Democrats and talking to Democrats?
I don't know because I didn't ask them. And if I decided not to do something, I wouldn't I don't give a shit what anybody says about anything, right? I'm gonna do like even my lady, right? I went from well, I have a strange relationship with my lady because she's a saint, right? She's an absolute saint. I went from being a mortgage person to being a trucker, right? And I didn't even talk to her about it. I just made a decision, right?
Yep.
Like the way I live my life, I make the decisions in my life, and I know it's messed up. I know I'm messed up like that. I know I shouldn't be like that, right? But I make decisions in my life, and the people that love me and are with me can support my decisions, or we can separate, right? That's the way I live. I don't check and see if it's okay with A, B, and C. And most people do live a herd mentality, right? Most people, they want to see if everything's right with their friends or whatever, right? Like somebody told me one time, that they didn't like the girl I was dating, right? Not the lady I'm with now, but I was like, good thing your opinion doesn't matter. I'm going to do what I want to do. And your opinion is not going to make me feel any better or worse, right? And I know that I'm a minority in that. I know most people care about what other people think about them. I could give two shits about what other people thought about me.
Well, then, so what is it then? I mean, I hate to say it. In my mind, that sounds a bit more aligned with Trump. So why now go with what is it? You thought Yang was a socialist, so you don't think that anymore?
No, because it was explained to me, right? It was explained to me in detail, right? You would think that Yang is a socialist, right? If you just listen to the marching band, right, of the Republican Party that's going to say giving anybody anything is socialism. Socialism is when we nationalize the means of production. Like when the government says Nike makes good shoes, we need shoes, we're taking over Nike, right?
Yeah.
That's socialism, right? What this is where this is capitalism, where income doesn't start at zero. Instead, it starts at 1,000. Right? So my Republican friends who say it's socialism, I say, well then, I guess Alaska is socialist and it's a depressed state because they get oil, they get the oil dividend from the oil, right? And they're like, well, that's different. I'm like, well, how is it different? Well, or they say things, like social. I'm like, your fire department is, according to you and your values, your fire department is socialism. So let's just
Mm-hmm.
let's get rid of the fire department too, and the police department, and the FBI, and the military, and the customs. So I just go down the list, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like Andrew says, it's the whole socialism and the whole socialism and capitalism dichotomy is getting old and breaking down, right? Like we've got to rewrite the rules of the economy. Like
Mm-hmm.
the economy is going to take a turn on people, and people are not they're not going to have access to a lot of the jobs that are available. Like what caused people to vote for Trump was the lack of manufacturing jobs. And what
Mm-hmm.
Trump did is Trump said it's Mexicans' fault.
Mm-hmm.
It's immigrants' fault. The immigrants are taking all the jobs. So
Mm-hmm.
he sold that narrative, and he called out the pain that the middle of the country was in.
Yeah.
He called out the pain of Michigan. He called out the pain of all these places in Ohio, right?
Yep.
He called, and so people responded. And he was basically saying we need to build a wall and we need to make America great again, meaning that we need to turn back the clock. But when you listen to Andrew is telling you, hey, it's not immigration, it's automation. If you go to one of these plants, it's not wall to wall immigrants, it's wall to wall robots,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when a robot takes your job, you pay taxes. The robot does not pay taxes. So rather than lose out on that tax revenue and just give it to the government, right?
Yep.
Anyway, why don't we do a value added tax, a mild value added tax at half the European because Amazon, Netflix, all these major companies, there's over 60 major billion dollar companies that are paying literally zero in taxes. And they move their money offshore, they pay their their board huge dividends, so they don't have a taxable event, right?
Yep.
So they're paying zero in taxes, right?
Yep.
And so he's like, why don't we just hand that money instead of to the government, right? Which is going to screw it up, right? Why don't we just flip that money back to the American people in the form of a dividend? It's still, I kind of thought that was bullshit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it was because I'm like, what are people going to do? So, my Republican, I'm a hard ass, right?
Yeah.
I'm the guy. In high school, I was a middle linebacker. I would grab guys, in the locker room at halftime. I would collar grab them and say, if you miss another assignment, it's me and you after the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the type of guy I am in a competition, right? I like competition. I hate to lose, right? I hate to lose,
Yep.
right? So, my alpha dog side, or my my side that's like, hey, we need to pick ourselves up our bootstraps and all that, was like, what are they going to do with the money, right? That's my instant attack, right? And
Yep.
then it was explained to me that, like, we're the owners and shareholders of this country. It's our wealth. Like, the information and the data that we are giving these companies is more valuable than oil. It's literally more valuable.
Could you repeat what you just said?
The information and data we are giving to these major companies,
Yes.
is more valuable. There was a study that says it's more valuable than oil.
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And so this is gonna. What's the oil of the new century, right?
Yep.
What's the oil of the new oil of the new century? I'm sorry, I'm turning, and it's it's hard for me, like when I'm doing all this stuff. That's why I get way off track, right? Um, so the oil of the new world is technology, AI, data, right?
Yep.
And
For sure.
basically, what he's saying is let the American people get a slice of every Amazon transaction, every Google search, every Facebook ad, every robot truck mile, right? And that that made sense to me when it was explained that we are the owners and shareholders of this country and it's our wealth, right?
Yes. Yes.
It's
So
like it's literally our data, right? It's our oil. Like it basically it would be like basically if you lived in Alaska and you're like, look, I'm standing under literally thousands and thousands of barrels of oil, and if we're gonna drill it, I should get some of the money from it, right?
if I can ask you, so when Trump said it's the Mexicans, it's the illegal immigrants, why do you think that worked?
Well, because he identified the pain that people were in, right? And he said he took a play from what I think was the left book, which is "I and I alone can fix it," right? I'm
Do you,
your hero, I'm your savior, vote for me, right?
do you
I and I alone can fix it.
so
But he did that. I mean, if we're just being straight up and we're just
yep,
being blunt, he
yep.
did that to to uh, to white America that was like 25 to 65, 25 to 75. Like that was his target area, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Uh, and yeah, I mean
What
that.
was that? What was there a time when that was your view, and now that has changed? Was that never your view? How did you feel when he said that, and how do you feel now?
Well, uh, I've worked I've worked with everybody. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
right now, I work for a Lithuanian company, right? I work for a Lithuanian immigrant company. I'm doing a trailer wrap, and it's going to be with a Lithuanian immigrant company. And you wouldn't get me to work for an American trucking company. I wouldn't do it ever,
Why
right?
not?
Because I like the way immigrants like. I can cuss out my dispatcher. I never have, right? Because this company is great, but like I could get into a heated debate or cuss out my dispatcher, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they wouldn't then like 5 minutes later they would send me a load and we would never talk. We would never talk about it, right?
Yeah.
And and there's not a list of like all these corporate rules and shit like that. Like it just allows me to work, just get to work. And there's not this huge application of that's like this thick of every, you know, every weed charge, every pound of weed I got, every stolen car, that I, like, yeah, they ask me those questions, but it's more informal, right?
So now this may tie into, I'm just curious, you had mentioned the scarcity of resources earlier, and you had said you wanted to get back to that. How does that tie into some of these charges of or racial divisions amongst groups? How does that tie in?
Well, the scarcity mindset, right? Like Andrew talks about, like if you're in a scarcity mindset, you lose like 13, 14, 15 points, like right off the gate, or they call it one standard deviation, right?
Yeah, IQ
So,
points.
yeah, IQ points. Sorry, I'm in the middle of traffic. Sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, so you lose the mental bandwidth because you're going back into survival mode, and I likened it, and when I share it, and that spoke to me because when I mentor guys, I'm like, all right, so when we're in our addiction, we don't think. We rely on instinct, and we rely on our animal side, and we can, once we crawl out of addiction, we can still access that
Mm-hmm.
to do things like make sales, talk about. Most people are scared to death to talk about money. Most people are scared to death to talk about race, sex, anything like that, right? Or most guys are scared to death to ask a girl out on a date, right? So we can still utilize those things, right? But when it's a negative, right, and the mental bandwidth in our brain is not working good because we can't even pay our own bills, right? These hateful ideologies like Trump comes up with, where people are susceptible to them because they make Trump makes it feel like when he talks that somebody else is getting something that you're not.
So yes.
So what he's doing is he's projecting the mindset of scarcity out onto his crowd. Meanwhile, he's living in abundance. He has an abundant mindset, right? He's never thinking about if. He's always thinking about when something's going to happen. He's never living in doubt, right? He's never living in insecurity and doubt and stuff like that. Like I talk to supporters all the time, and they say, "Well, if this happens and if that happens," and I said, "No. There is no if, right? There is only when Andrew gets elected. There is no if, because in my mind, if we don't win, there like losing's not an option, and the only thing I can think about is eating out of canned goods, right? And people not having the basic needs in 3 to 4, 5, 6 years down the line. If we don't repair what's happened to this country and rewrite the rules of the economy and stop using headline unemployment and GDP stuff like that as our measurements, we need to start thinking about like our mental health, substance abuse, how our water and air is. Our kids getting shot at school or beat up at school, right? We don't even think about those things, right? All we think about is stock prices, GDP, headline unemployment. That's all we think about. So basically, he's like, I'm gonna rewrite the rules of the economy. I'm gonna create a scorecard, an American scorecard that tells us how our water is, how our educational system is, how we're doing. I mean, the last 3 years, because of suicides and opioid addiction, our life expectancy has dropped for the last 3 years. So how can we be the most abundant country in the world and our people are dying? Like, how is that possible?
Yeah.
So when I heard that, I'm like, if that doesn't make sense to, like, I will just say it like this. I send different podcasts depending on your personality style to different people, right? And I judge people's, and I shouldn't judge, but I do, right? I'm human. I judge people's intelligence and decision-making process based on their knowledge that Andrew Yang exists and that they have listened to him for more than 45. If you have listened to Andrew Yang for more than 45 minutes and you're not all in, you can't be intelligent to me, right? I don't like. I really believe the other supporters of the other candidates, they just don't know Andrew Yang. They can't possibly be that stupid. That's how I believe.
So let me ask you, I think I'm going to ask you just a couple more things, although we actually had, so I just noticed we had a super chat, and I apologize again. We've been having some difficulty, as we said earlier, with the chat system. The chat's not relaying up to the top, and so we're a little disconnected from the rest of the audience, and I do apologize for that. But we did get from, oh God, and I promised I'd learn this guy's name, and I'd say it, and then brag to everyone that
I believe
actually
it was
knew.
Carbonneau.
Oh, you son of a, you, of course, you'd know, thanks. Thanks, just showed me up. Reed Carbonneau donated $5 and said, right. So that was, thank you for the super chat. We sincerely appreciate it. I also wanted to, oh boy, I've lost my train. There were a couple of interesting points I wanted to hit on. You had said everybody judges you. I did want to talk a bit more about scarcity of resources, but I think we're running a little short on time now.
Well, the scarcity mindset, right?
Yeah.
Like when you're living in a scarcity mindset and you're not living in abundance, you can't think about things like, is the educational system good in my area? Global warming? You can't think about because all you can think about is your bills, right? You're like the penguins can wait in line, gun control can wait in line. I'm trying to pay my bills, and you're disengaged with the political process because you don't think that there's going to be change, right? You don't think that your vote matters because you're too busy. I mean, if you look at the numbers, poor people don't vote as much as people who have money, right? That's just pure numbers, right? Pure numbers. Again, pure numbers, right? So that's why scarcity is. I mean, it's a bad mindset to have, because if you're constantly thinking about paying your bills, not only that, let's say there was 50,000 people and you put $1,000 a month. What's 50,000 times 1,000? 5 billion, something like that.
Yep.
50,000 times 1,000 is
5
what
billion,
you asked?
okay.
I'll add on. He's the smart one. I'm the good-looking one. Don't laugh at that too hard.
It's either 500 million. It's either 500 million or 5 billion.
It's 50 million.
Okay, it's 50 million. Okay.
Yes.
So if you put $50 million a month into a smaller town, right? Imagine the buying power that like how it would move the economy, right?
Mm-hmm.
How it and then for women, right? Like they do all this work, right? They do all this work, and we don't, like us men, we don't do anything but pound our chests and talk about how we provide for them and we protect them, right? Like that's such fucking bullshit, right? Like it's just, it's total bullshit. Like how am I protecting my lady, and I'm in a truck 3,000 miles from her, right?
Yeah.
And I provide for my family, right? But both parties are providing for families now, right? So women a lot of times they're in these relationships with their job where like they've got a boss that's treating them like crap, right? They can't move up the ladder sometimes, and they can get an entrepreneurial spirit about themselves, right? With this $1,000 a month, and or they can say, you know what, I've always wanted to take care of my children the right way, right? And I feel like I can do it better than wholesale, them to somebody else. You know what I mean?
Yep. That makes a lot of sense. Let me, so I want to highlight one thing that I thought was interesting that you said, but I don't think we have time for it. So I'm going to ask you a final question, and I'm going to pass it off to Ansgar if he's got any. But I found it was very interesting what you said, that we measure our success by GDP and not by life expectancy and not by education. And that does strike me as something that's not often considered a view on the conservative side. And if Ansgar wants to follow up with that, I'm sure he will, because I do want to make sure he's got some time to ask some follow-up questions before I go. But the other final question I did want to ask, so you've said that you're very dedicated to the campaign. You know, can you give me? I mean, how dedicated are you? What do you mean when you say that?
Oh, I mean, how dedicated can you be? Like, I mean, as much as you. Let's just put it this way, right? Like,
Yep.
like I grew up religious, and I believe in God, Jesus, the Bible, the Holy Spirit, the whole ball of wax, right? But like, I don't access God. Like, I don't pray. I don't like get mad at God. Like, basically, it's just conceptual. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
Like, I don't pray. I don't ask God for stuff. None of that. But if, in fact, there is a God, right? And
Yep.
he came down and said, I will end you, and you can come to heaven if there is a heaven or whatever. You know, total painless. You could sacrifice your own self, right? So that America could have a two-term president that was Andrew Yang. I
Mm-hmm.
would do it gladly in a heartbeat, right? And you know what? I've said that before, and people make it out to be like, you know, you're mentally ill or you're suicidal or something like that. It's more of a sacrifice thing. It's no more than Pete Buttigieg, you know, being a Marine or an Army guy. I think he's an Army guy, right?
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
it's no like I really believe without Andrew we're fucked, right? Like, for example, we had the climate. We've had like we got this climate situation, climate change problem, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Global warming. Sorry, I'm all over the place because
A
the
climate change
area.
is the appropriate term. Global warming is kind of a catch-all, kind of more of a pop term.
Well, we've had basically two different lines of thinking. We've had uh, it's a Democratic talking point, which the Democrats have basically used it as a talking point, right? I will hand them that, but what the Republicans will do is they completely ignore science. They ignore the fact that we were at 40 parts per million at the start
Right.
of the Industrial Revolutions. Now we're at like about 400 about 400, between 400 and, depending on where you're at, 400 parts per million. We get to 650 parts per million, we're fucked, right?
Yeah.
And Andrew, rather than make it just some point to bash Republicans with, right? Because really, if Democrats really looked at the numbers, they would say that if we're the leader of this whole situation, we're only 15% of carbon emissions. So the other 85, we've got to convince China to stop giving their coal power plants and selling them to Africa, right? We've got to start using this. There's a new type of nuclear that is like state of the art, right?
Thorium.
And thorium, yeah, we've got to
Well,
start
there's
using
also
thorium.
the breeder reactors that basically live off of the waste of they consume the waste of traditional reactors, which is really interesting.
Yeah, and we've basically got to unfuck ourselves, right? Like we've got to do geoengineering, right? and basically he has just a clear cut plan, right? Like it's even as like for example, I'm in it. I don't really care about a dividend. Like 12 G's is not going to make or break me. Not going to change my life at all whatsoever, right? But what will change my life is this democracy dollars, right? I get $100 every year that I can give toward a candidate, where a candidacy I can break it up to two candidates, whatever, right? And one of the things he talks about is aligning the incentives. So you have to just realign because people are self-centered. I know I am, right? I'm always when people accuse me of self-centeredness, I say, yeah, like I'm in this for what's best for me, right? Like when people try to accuse me of that, I agree with them, and I'm like, yeah. Like I'm at a car lot, right? And the guy says, he says, I can't do that, and I'm like, sure you can, like you can do anything you want to do, right? You just don't want to give me what I want, right? And what I want is not in alignment with what you want, right?
Right.
Yep.
What I like about Andrew is you can be a Democrat, you can be a Republican, you could be, far right, far left, center libertarian. You could be progressive, regressive left, toxic. You can be a toxic masculinity guy who's running around on roids. You could be a toxic feminist. You could be whatever you want. And when you hear him, you're like, holy shit, this is different. Like he speaks to everybody. Literally, I go to these Yang Gang meetings, and there is people that we say it in recovery that, because there's people of all walks of life. We say to each other like, there's no way I would get high with you motherfuckers, right? But our number one tradition is unity, right? We can't have disunity in recovery because the traditions protect the group from the addict and then the addict from the group. Well, humanity first, which is our biggest, we have a bunch of values, but our humanity first value protects us from the group and then the group from us, right? And we go to these Yang Gang meetings, and literally when Andrew comes and he speaks at a rally, it's every single, you have older people, you have younger people, you have Latinos, you have black people, you have white people, you have women, you have software engineers, right? You have truck drivers. There is no there is no demographic that he doesn't or can't reach. And I'll kind of close with this. What we struggle with is get attention. Right? I always tell people get attention, right? Because we struggle with name recognition. People don't even know who Andrew is sometimes, right?
Yeah.
So the thing is if we had 100% name recognition, we would have at least 50% of the vote. And I know this for a fact because I've been to I was at the Texas Democrats, and we had 60% of the room, right? In Texas with Julian Castro there and Beto, right? And we're like we run the internet, period. Like if you think you're gonna come into the internet, or the internets as they say, and you're gonna talk smack about Andrew Yang and get the facts wrong, you will come to the internet on your feet, but you will leave on your back. Because
I am going to have to interrupt because we have two super chats, and I want to pass this off to Ansgar.
Oh,
We're getting a bit late, and we said we might run over, but if we did, we may bypass the after party just because we're running late. But I would like to finish this, and I think we've got a couple of good things left that we'd like to hit. But the two chats I got to hit. The first, and let me get back to the GDC side. Because we're idiots, we like to stream to two different places simultaneously. Derp patron, I guess. Derp patron. That's cute. That's like sock account. The scarcity mindset Yang quotes a lot is from a study on farmers in India conducted by Princeton. So that's good to know. I'm not sure if that's
So just to speak to that real quick, not to interrupt.
Please.
Yeah. So basically, there's a study done in India where I think it's a sugar cane. Basically, they make all their money all at once, right, for a whole year, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they right before harvest, like two to 3 months before harvest, they're completely different, and even their mental bandwidth and their problem-solving techniques start to wane as the bank account starts to wane, and they can't feed themselves. And we talked about this before, right? Where like, a pack of wolves has a 50-mile radius, right?
Yes.
And as soon as another pack of wolves gets in that radius, it becomes a problem because they're all fighting over the same amount of caribou, elk, whatever's in that area. And this is where you get the red versus blue, right? You get this red versus blue because both sides feel like they're not getting something, and they feel like they have to fight over the same elk. You know what I mean?
Yes.
If that makes sense. People stop thinking with their rational mind, and they start thinking with their instinctual mind, and that's a dangerous thing. And unless you're trying to have sex with somebody, and you're like, you're trying to procreate and keep the race alive, right? The human race. You're like, okay, then it's good. But other than that, it's a bad thing to be instinctual. We need to think. But go ahead.
All right, and then the only other question I had was, you spend a lot of time in the car, in the truck. What do you listen to? Was by Jim Majors asked that question. What do you listen to?
Okay, so I usually listen to like Andrew Yang everything, right? So I listen to nonstop Andrew Yang, right? Or I usually I'll listen to different podcasts, right? Or like, I'm part of a content creators network, and so I listen to other people's, like, we critique each other's work and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I like country music, but I haven't listened to music or listened to sports podcasts and stuff. I like football. I'm into football and stuff like that, and basketball, and I like sports, but like right now, I just literally don't have time for sports because we're working on our Yang trailer, right? And so there's a like I said, the Lithuanian company that I work for. There's a guy who does all the work for all the different trucking companies in Chicago, and his work is phenomenal. He's working on it right now. We're actually going to be bringing, if we can get it done, we're going to be bringing Yang Trailer actually to the debates, and we're trying to actually get, like, we want to try to see if we can like pull permits or get press passes where we can actually have the truck at the debates. Like that's what I'm trying to do. That's what we're trying to do.
All right. So Ansgar, did you have any? And what I'm going to do, let me figure out. I'm going to see if I can. I'm going to start trying to set up and see if we can do the after party. We got one more. We do have some people who want to do the after party. Let me see what I can do. So this will be our first time running it. I will give it a shot. Ansgar, it's all yours.
Okay.
One more thing, and I do apologize. I want to thank the Yang Gang. I just kind of threw out a fundraiser, and the Yang Gang raised like $8,000 in like 12 hours for a fundraiser.
That's awesome.
So go ahead.
Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of people talking about this, and I had my own reservations, and we decided not to go into it because we wanted to keep on track with the subject of the show. But I do have to ask before we get to the after party. I was raised by a single mother, and I am the house husband, right? And so when you talk about traditional male gender roles, while I'm a rather masculine guy, and in some ways I do take the more traditionally masculine role in the in our relationship, in other ways I don't. So I want to know what you define as traditional or as male gender roles when you're talking about this sort of thing.
Well, for me, it's different. It's different for everybody. One of the things, and I'll speak to Andrew Yang on it, and then I'll speak to myself. Andrew Yang, I think he's doing a really good job of redefining masculinity for America. Like, for example, he's gotten emotional a few times, right? Which I can get emotional, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty obvious he's a caretaker of his kids. He cares about his kids and his family, but he's also really strong in the fact that he doesn't really like, where me and him differ is he's more disciplined and would choose a battle, right? For me, I would just battle for the sake of battling because I was kind of raised that way. And now I am learning through certain aspects just not to engage in battles.
Right, but what do you view as when you say that when you're talking about the male gender role, what is the role of the male in society?
Well, for me, this is just for me. I believe that for my relation, this is my relationship, right?
Okay.
And I like what you do and what somebody else does. That's on them. I'm not here to tell people how to live their lives because they know more about how to live their lives than I do, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for me, my lady is very, very feminine, right? And there's never tension in the home when I'm providing, ever, right? But if things ever get tight financially, there sometimes can be some tension, right? And I think, I used to be a little bit, when I was younger, I used to think that, money didn't matter at all to women, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as I got older, I've noticed that, that it does, especially to the type of women that I attract, right? And so money and being able to say, like, being able to talk and say what's on your mind, and not being shy about what you want out of the relationship, and like that's what.
Now, I think I see what you're saying, and I think I can agree. But I think that as long as I have no problem if in each relationship, two people define what their roles in that relationship are going to be, as long as it's amicable to both parties, no matter what. I think a lot of people were concerned because of the way you were talking about on a broader scale. You know what I mean? Men being forced to
Well,
give up
well,
their
I talk about those
male
things.
role.
I talk about those things because in recovery, men stick with men and
Hmm.
women stick with women. So when I'm talking
Okay.
to men, right, I'm
Right.
like, dude, you piss and moan and whine about you can't find a mate, right? And you already got a good job, right?
Hmm.
But you piss and moan about you can't find a mate, but you don't go out and talk to girls and ask them out. So you need to grow. Like, this is how I talk to guys. I'm like,
Right.
this is why if you look at all those active shooters, right? Every single one of them is like they did a study, 26 out of 27 of these active
Mhm.
local recent active shooters were uh, were raised in the same environment and had like they basically couldn't get a date,
Yeah.
right?
In
Like
fact,
like
Nick and I were
and they
talking.
felt like they're losers. So for
Mhm.
men, a lot of times, uh, and it's projected a lot of times through society too, right?
But
And
you're
we
not
feel
blaming.
like
You're not saying that it's
what's that?
because it's women's fault. It's the men's fault.
No, say that again.
He's saying you're not
I'm
blaming women for these failures. Is what he's asking.
Yeah, like we feel like we're made to feel like we're a failure if we can't provide for our family and if we can't grab a mate out of
Right.
the the fold that is there. And then when we do get a mate, if we something happens and we stop providing, then our mate ditches us. And I know this with my lady, right? I've talked with this my lady, and this is why a lot of men in their 40s, 50s, it's been one of the reasons men commit suicide because they're made to feel like their value is in what they can provide, and as soon as they can't provide it, their mate and their kid, and we see it in the animal world, right?
Hmm.
You always see an up and coming buck come up, right, and
Yeah.
challenge the older guy for the 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 right to mate the other women, right? So, and that is how provision is made, right? So this is all. I know this is not about Andrew Yang, but this is all about uh, being human, but also being we are animal. Like so, I whenever a resource is thin, uh, people, and like I don't want, like I tell my lady, I'm like I don't want a societal breakdown. Right, is the
Right.
last thing that I would want is a societal breakdown because my wife, quite frankly, is like she could be an underwear model. You know what I mean? Like she's got a fat ass and big titties. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? And women in places, right? In places where there's a societal breakdown, right? People treat women like they're currency. You see it in developing countries. People treat women as if they're currency,
Um.
right?
So, but I want to get back real quick. So here I want to express a view and see if you agree. See, to me, the traditional idea of what a man is and what a woman is in our modern society just out of date, right? And one of the problems that, in my opinion, that we're seeing is that young men don't know what their place is. They feel out of place, and they feel like they don't know what their purpose is. And a lot of men feel the need to have purpose in life, and this has led to a lot of angry, violent young men. In
I
my
agree.
view, our view of what masculinity is and its role in society needs a major update.
And I agree, and I think Andrew Yang is giving a pretty good go of what that means, right?
Okay.
Like, for example, he's like like he's just a dude's dude. Like, he likes to play basketball, but he's also nerdy, right? He'll get emotional. He talks, especially when he talks about his kids and stuff like that.
Mm.
Any show of emotion in the traditional male is just completely not like. Today I was having a conversation with another man, and I had to tell him, I was kind of putting, and I was like, hey, I feel like I'm not included in the party here, right? Which happens to be a lot because, quite frankly, I say things that rub people the wrong way because I'm very direct and I say what I mean, and I don't care what other people think about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when people are forming a group, they may not want me in it, right? But I had to explain to this person, we were forming a group about something, and I was like, you know, ultimately, really, if I'm being honest, I'm just brought back to the point where uh, we're where I'm not one of the cool kids, and uh, I'm felt I'm I am to be felt like I'm not a part of, right? And that I'm not valued and my opinion is not valued, and that's why I wasn't invited to be a part of whatever said group was, right? And quite honestly, it's painful, but it's something that I've had to deal with over. Uh, but I have where the difference between me and some of these young males is I have purpose, right? I have my guys that that I'm their guy and they're my guy. I have a lady right now. She's a liberal. I have like three ladies that are really liberal that I talk to that are it's nothing sexual. It's just we're good friends, right? Um, and a lot of times people might think they're like, how do you get along with these ultra lefty women? And I'm like, because whenever there's an issue, I stick up for them, right? Like everybody else might down on them, but I'm the one guy that will stick up. Like I stick up for my friends, right? That's another male trait that I think, right? Um, so I have a lot of purpose. My purpose is, to help other addicts, to help other felons, and then obviously now to help get Andrew Yang elected. Like the biggest thing now is just getting them seen. That's it.
Well,
You know?
all right. Well, thank you very much for your time. What I'd like to do now is I'd like to remind people of a couple of things and talk about where we're going to go from here. First of all, we do actually have a week from today. We're going to have an economist and several, hopefully, we also plan on having a couple of political pundits on to discuss the UBI and discuss whether or not it is possible. I have seen in the live chat some discussion of would it raise inflation, would it raise the standard of living or the cost of living such that that would have completely obliterate it. And I think these are fair questions and questions that we've had, a lot of people have had, so we are going to be discussing that exactly 1 week from today. I hope you guys will join in. We also do have on Tuesday Cyrus the Skeptic to discuss the and I apologize, I'm kind of multitasking here. We're going to have Cyrus the Skeptic on to discuss cults and
deconversions and things like that. Yes.
Yep.
So you're having one on cults?
Yeah, we have a good friend of ours. His name is Cyrus the Skeptic. He is an atheist. He does a lot of discussion on a wide variety of topics, but also, of course, religion. And he is, unbeknownst to most people, he's actually an expert in cults, and he has a lot of experience specifically with cults.
I'm mesmerized by cults.
Oh. I hope I hope you don't mean that literally, but yes.
No, I like watching documentaries, and I'm mesmerized how people pull it off. That's all.
Right.
I hope you will join us then for, I guess, and I do want to try to get one quick. I've got multiple windows open. Everything's going crazy here on the back end. I hope you'll join us then. That's going to be Tuesday, same time. We're going to be shooting for Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard. We're going to have that discussion, and then a week from today, we're going to have the UBI. So I hope you'll join us, and you can also talk to Dave. Now, you had said that you didn't want to go too long. We are a bit past. We're about a half hour past where we had wanted to go, but we are prepared to do the after show if you're up for just going on to. We can send you. That's
fine. We could do.
Okay. All right, and we won't necessarily do it too long.
After show or whatever.
However long it works for you. And so here's what we're going to do to everybody who's listening. The after show is only on In Time, so you have to go to the In Time channel. That's youtube.com/In Time Show. We will be having an after show. You can contact Dave McGinnis either on the Discord. You'll also be able to talk with him on the live chat. If anyone is wondering where our live chats were vanishing to, I have a sneaking suspicion Ansgar actually hooked up the somehow it looks like the live chats have been getting directed to the wrong. Actually, you don't even hook that up, so I don't know how. I'm going to blame Ansgar because that's sort of one of my favorite hobbies. But the Ansgar was trying to figure out where our why the live chat stream wasn't hooking up, and the reason is it appears we're actually hooked up to the after show. And that's why the live chat is blank. Nobody's been live chatting on the after show. So would I have to
click on something else, by the way?
You will get a click. You will get a link from Dave McGinnis in probably about 2 minutes, and he will pass you the link that will get you into the live show. That's just.
Then I know exactly what happened. What's happened? Real quick, Nick, is we can't schedule the after show ahead of time because it's automatically going to hook up the chat and everything to whichever the last scheduled event is.
Yeah, or we schedule them in reverse order, but we may still have other complications with that. We will see. But yeah, that was. I figured that out, so I started sending you snarky messages from the back end of the after show. Because I was like, "Hello, I found your messages, Ansgar." And I can see all these tweets on my end, like, "Why is the live chat now?" I see a whole list of Ansgar on my OBS. There's a whole list of tweets.
That's hilarious.
Just stacked up, or not tweets, but chats. Like, this isn't working, and he's getting really frustrated. He's like, "Where are these messages showing up?" I was like, "Oh, they're on my end over here." Like, it would have been cute if I had fired up the after show engine, the OBS for the after show. If I'd fired that up 2 hours ago, we could have saved Ansgar an aneurysm. But yeah, so that's the deal. That's YouTube is notorious for having difficulty with. If you schedule multiple streams like that, you have these kinds of problems. So,
by the way, I need to read a couple chats because they are very important and pertinent. In fact, where is it? Let me find it. There is a chat that is, I think, the most important thing to be taken away from this entire discussion. As I find it. Here we go. The Deviants said, to In Time, hey sexy boys. I think that is the most important chat that has come through, and I think that is the point we take away from this. That beats
our super chats. That is getting an honorary $50 super chat right there is what that is.
That's right.
Oh, wow.
That's, or then was there another one, or?
No, that's the most important thing. Of course, my wife
I agree.
says no blaming Ansgar unless it's for something wonderful. LOL. Yes, I am deeply biased in this opinion, so no
Well,
blaming me.
she is biased, and we all know she's biased. But the problem is, I have a hard time calling her out because I'm a little scared of her. So I think for now, when she's not looking, that's why I do blame Ansgar for just about everything that goes wrong. But I'm smart about it, which is I only do it when he's not paying attention. When he's around, I'm sitting there going, "Oh, Ansgar's perfect, man. I don't know what the deal is." All right, so Fred, you're going to get a link any minute from Dave. He's in fact already in the room, and we're just about ready to go. And then I think Ansgar's going to pop in the room, and then we will. So the after show is again. It's and there's already a bunch of people there, as I can tell. So the after show on the in time show on YouTube, and we will be up in probably a little less than 5 minutes. It's already good to go. So, and Ansgar has graciously pre-filled the chat, and we've got loads of just cursing and swearing and all this stuff coming out through the chat. It's great. It's marvelous. So, we will see you all there, and look forward to seeing you guys on Tuesday for Cults with Cirrus, and a week from today for the UBI.
See you later.